Okay, so you figured out who the protagonist and antagonist is. You figured out what the protagonist's outer goal and inner conflict is, and you figured out what they've learned. So you pretty much think you know what the theme of the film is. You figured out what it is that we as the audience are supposed to learn from the film. Now what you have to do is express that in a proper theme statement format. There are certain rules for that. In fact, there are 4 of them, and I'm going to go over what those 4 rules are right now. The first one is it must be a concrete statement. That means you are stating something quite definitively. Not, oh, the theme of the film is about fear or about love. What about fear? What about love? What exactly is the film saying? What is the thesis statement of the film? It should have individual and universal applicability. What that means is whatever you think the theme of the film is, it should apply to the characters in the film. So it may be a very important lesson, but if it's not a lesson that's appropriate for the protagonist, then it's not the theme of this particular film. So that's the individual applicability. Does it apply to the individuals in the film? But it also needs to have universal applicability. Is this a lesson that everybody can learn? Is this something that really applies to everyone? So if it's a lesson that's just appropriate for this particular character or just a small number of people, then it's not really the theme of the film. That it probably represents a larger lesson. So if what you've got is something that has individual applicability but not a universal, what you have to say is, well, what's that a symbol of? What's the larger lesson that can be going on here? What's something that everybody could learn from this particular circumstance? So, for example, you might have watched a war film, and your first thought is, oh, the theme of the film is war is bad. Okay, that's a little bit overly general. Can we get more specific? War is bad. Okay, what about war? Well, war makes people do bad things. That's a little bit general. What exactly? Okay, well, if you get too much individual, you've got individual applicability if you were to say something like, you shouldn't betray your friends in war. Okay, well, that could very well be true for this particular character, but that's not just something that really applies to everybody. Not everybody who participates in a war is at risk of betraying their friends. That's not something that comes up. Could the fact that this character had to betray his friends tell us something larger about war, something that would have universal applicability? Well, how about in order to be successful at war, one must bring out the worst characteristics of humanity? Okay, that's something that would apply individual applicability to a character who betrayed a friend in war and would also have universal applicability. That is true for everybody, everywhere, that in order to be successful at war, you must access the worst parts of your humanity. Stimulate thought and take a stand. So your theme of a particular film might be dogs are nice. Well, that doesn't really stimulate thought. You're not going to have a whole bunch of arguments about whether or not dogs are nice. Take a stand. It needs to be something that is of significance, of moral consequence, something that could make people question, is this true or is this not true? Think about the movie Grease. Most people have seen that film. What do you think the theme of the movie Grease is? Well, first you figure out who's the protagonist, who changes. Well, Danny, Sandy. Sandy's really the one who changes. She starts out as an innocent good girl, and in the end she's a bit of a wild child in order to get her man. What is her goal? Her goal is to get Danny. What's her inner conflict? She doesn't want to behave the way she has to in order to get Danny. Who is her antagonist? Danny. He's the one who stands in the way because he wants her to behave differently than when they first met and fell in love. And what does she do in the end? She changes. So the theme of Grease is one should change who they are for friendship and love. That stimulates thought and it takes a stand. You may not like the theme of a film, but the message of that film is you should change in order to be happy. You should change in order to go along with your friends or to get love. Potential to alter behavior. It can't just be a generalized observation. A real theme has to have the potential for people in the audience to leave and change the way they do things. They may not actually change the way they do things, but it must have that potential. So, for instance, for Grease, people could watch that movie and say, you know what, you're right. I need to stop holding on to my own personal values and start acting like everyone else around me so that I can have friends or a loved one, find love. So those are the 4 rules for expressing theme. Once you've figured out what you think the theme of the film is, make sure that it follows all 4 of those rules.